Hello, here we are on the second half of In Favor of the Federal Constitution by James Madison. Part 1, we talked about James Madison and his experience as a founding father and when it happened, who he was arguing against, Patrick Henry. We talked about how he wants this to be a logical argument, not using feelings and passions. And then we talked about each of the arguments that Patrick Henry made and how Madison proved those to be invalid arguments. And so now we're getting into the part of the speech where Madison is introducing his own ideas. Right here, we're starting right here at this give, okay? So let's go ahead and dive in. Give me leave to say something of the nature of the government and to show that it is safe and just to vest it with the power of taxation. So we can see that a big issue right here is taxation, which of course was an issue when this whole country was started. Taxation without representation was an issue. So it makes sense that it would be a hot topic. Safe and just to vest the government with the power of taxation. There are a number of opinions, but the principal question is whether it be a federal or a consolidated government. So when they're coming up with this issue of taxation, the biggest issue is whether it's a federal or consolidated government. So let's define these. A federal government is a government with a strong centralized power, okay? A consolidated government, consolidated means to unite in one system or a whole. Okay, as we read further, what we'll find is federal is really referring to almost tyrannical, someone with a strong, powerful head, and then consolidated is more of like the people have the power. So, in order to judge properly of the question before us, we must consider it minutely in its principal parts. So if we're going to judge properly, we have to look at the details, right? Minutely means the small details and its principal parts, its main parts, okay? I conceive myself that it is of a mixed nature. It is in a manner unprecedented. What does unprecedented mean? That means it's really never happened before. What has never happened before? It is what? It is our government, right? The government, our government, where is it referring to it? Well, it is in a matter unprecedented. We cannot find one express example in the experience of the world. So there's no example ever in the whole world of a government like this government that they have formed, which is really powerful to me to consider. It stands by itself. In some respects, it is a government of a federal nature. In others, it is of a consolidated nature. Even if we attend to the manner in which the Constitution is investigated, ratified, and made the act of the people of America, I can say, notwithstanding what the honorable gentleman has alleged, that this government is not completely consolidated, nor is it entirely federal. So he's saying, even if we look at how the Constitution was investigated, how it was ratified, which is made into law, made the act of the people of America, which means the people had a say in it, he can say, despite what this honorable gentleman has alleged, that this government is not completely consolidated, nor is it entirely federal. Who are parties to it? The people. But not the people as composing one great body, but the people as composing 13 sovereignties. So what does this mean? This means that it is run by the people, but not just the people as a gigantic mass, but the people as composing 13 sovereignties, which of course are the 13 original states, right? So each state, the people run each state, and then the states have a say. Were it, as the gentleman asserts, a consolidated government, the assent of a majority of the people would be sufficient for its establishment. And, as a majority, have adopted it already. The remaining states would be bound by the act of the majority, even if they unanimously rejected it. So what he's saying here is if it were just run by the people, then it wouldn't matter what each state's people thought. If the majority of the whole country decided on something, then they wouldn't have a say, even if their state unanimously rejected it. Were it such a government as is suggested, it would now be binding on the people of this state without their having had the privilege of deliberating on it. So if the majority decided it, then the people who were in a state that rejected it, they wouldn't have the privilege of even considering it, because it would just be binding because it was the majority of all the people. But sir, no state is bound by it, as it is, without its own consent. Should all the states adopt it, it will then be a government established by the 13 states of America, not through the intervention of the legislatures, but by the people at large. So he's saying if all the states will adopt it, it will then be a government established by all 13 states, not through the intervention of legislatures where laws are made, like was mentioned earlier, because the majority decided it so, but by the people at large in each state. In this particular respect, the distinction between the existing and the proposed governments is very material. The existing system has been derived from the dependent derivative authority of the legislatures of the states, whereas this is derived from the superior power of the people. Okay, so the existing system has been derived from the dependent derivative authority of the legislature of the states, whereas this is derived from the superior power of the people. So the first example is laws being made of the states, where this is the power of the people in each state, superior power of the people in each state. If we look at the manner in which alterations are to be made in it, the same idea is, in some degree, attended to. So what are we talking about? We've started a new paragraph, so it's a new idea. If we look at the manner in which alterations are to be made in it, so alterations made assuming to the Constitution or to the ruling way of the government. So we're going to look at how alterations are made. By the new system, a majority of the states cannot introduce amendments, nor are all the states required for that purpose. 3/4 of them must concur in alterations. And this there is departure from the federal idea. The members of the National House of Representatives are to be chosen by the people at large in proportion to the numbers in the respective districts. So first he says, by the new system, the majority of the states cannot introduce amendments, nor are the states required for that purpose. Nor are all the states required for that purpose. 3/4 of them must concur in alterations. In this, there's a departure from the federal idea. So then he starts talking about the House of Representatives are to be chosen by people at large in proportion to the numbers in the respective districts. Okay, so House of Representatives, you have people in proportion to the numbers in the respective districts. So if you have more people in your districts, you'll have more members of the House of Representatives. When we come to the Senate, its members are elected by the states in their equal and political capacity. So what that means is same number equally. I'm not saying that very well, but it's different from how it is with the House of Representatives. But had the government been completely consolidated, the Senate would have been chosen by the people in their individual capacity in the same manner as the members of the other house. Thus, it is of a complicated nature. And this complication, I trust, will be found to exclude the evils of absolute consolidation as well as of a mere confederacy. So what he's saying is he's pointing out this plan that now we're familiar with, the difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate. And the idea is that by doing them both differently, you're providing two different types of people who will have a say in the laws that are being made, and that this would hopefully exclude the evils of absolute consolidation, which is rule of the masses, basically. Why is it crooked? Okay, here we go. Those who wish to become federal representatives, let me move my binder, hold on. There we go. Those who wish to become federal representatives must depend on their credit with that class of men who will be the most popular in their countries, who generally represent the people in the state governments. They can, therefore, never succeed in any measure contrary to the wishes of those on whom they depend. So the idea is, if the people are voting them in, then they have to do what is the most popular in their counties. I might have said countries. In their counties, which is holding them accountable to doing something, to succeeding in any measure contrary to the wishes of those on whom they depend. So if they want to get reelected, they have to make sure that what they're choosing is in alignment with those people that they're representing. It is almost certain, therefore, that the deliberations of the members of the Federal House of Representatives will be directed to the interests of the people of America. As to the other branch, so what it's saying there is the idea is the House of Representatives will be an accurate reflection of what the people want, because they're so reliant on their votes. They're to vote in the way of the people that they're representing. As to the other branch, the senators will be appointed by the legislature, and though elected for 6 years, I do not conceive they will so soon forget the source from whence they derive their political existence. So again, he's saying, even though they're serving for longer, they're still going to have in their mind, I want to make sure I'm representing my people in my area well. This election of one branch of the federal by the state legislature secures an absolute dependence of the former on the latter. The biennial exclusion of 1/3 will lessen the facility of a combination and may put a stop to intrigues. I appeal to our past experiences, whether they will attend to the entrance of their constituent states. Have not those gentlemen who have been honored with seats in the Congress often signalized themselves by their attachment to their seats? Okay, so basically he's saying that the hope is that by using these two different methods within the government, that it will allow there to be they'll attend to the interests of their constituent states. So he wants this to help create a situation where they are going to be representing their states well. And then he's referring to honored with seats in the Congress often signalize themselves by their attachment to their seats. So he's referencing that they really want to keep those spots. So in order to keep those spots, they're going to want to make the people happy. I wish this government may answer the expectation of its friends and foil the apprehension of its enemies. I hope the patriotism of the people will continue and be a sufficient guard to their liberties. So this is his conclusion of his speech, and he's basically saying, I wish that this government would answer the expectation of its friends, so it would rise to the expectation of people who are for the government, and it would foil the apprehension of its enemies. Foil means that it would ruin, it would disrupt. So the apprehension of the enemies of the government, they would see that they were wrong. I hope the patriotism of the people will continue and be a sufficient guard to their liberties. So he hopes that people's patriotism will result in their guarding of their liberties. I believe its tendency will be that the state governments will counteract the general interests and ultimately prevail. The number of the representatives is yet sufficient for our safety and will gradually increase. And if we consider their different sources of information, the number will not appear too small. So he believes its tendency will be that the state governments will counteract the general interests and ultimately prevail. So I think my interpretation is he's saying what he believes is this ability to represent the different states, and then the states' governments will counteract any possibility of general interest that the government of the whole would be trying to do that what might not be in the state's interests. So they're basically acting as a balance to each other. The number of the representatives is yet sufficient for our safety and will gradually increase. So representatives right now is sufficient for our safety. There's enough people representing that they are able to accurately represent the people and will gradually increase, obviously, as the country increases and grows. If we consider their different sources of information, the number will not appear too small. I'm not sure exactly what that's referring to, but my interpretation is that they're coming from all different places. They're all coming with different information in different places and different knowledge of what their people want. And so the number won't be too small because they're each bringing their own opinions and experience to the table. So we had here where he talked primarily about taxation. That was a big concern, but he basically pointed out that it wasn't really the taxation they were worried about. That's what it appeared to be on the surface. Really what they were worried about is whether this was going to be a federal government or a consolidated government. And it's essentially like one end of the pendulum, each one. Federal, where the central power was too strong. Consolidated, where it was the voice of the masses and not every voice got to be heard or counted. And by showing that our government was a unique mix of both, he was relieving the fears of taxation because he was showing that there was going to be fair representation of the people and there wouldn't be anyone who was taxed without representation. Because again, that was the big issue, right? Before when they were the colonies of the English government. Okay, and then he talked about, let's look at how alterations will be made. And he basically explained how the House of Representatives and the Senate would work. Now, we're used to hearing about it, but it was a whole new, brand new idea. Just like we said up here, he's like, we've never seen anything like it before. Where is it? Basically, there's nothing in all the world that we've ever seen like it before. So that he's explaining how it's going to work because that's a new idea. They haven't had that experience before. He's explaining how some will be more elected by the people and some will be more appointed by the states. And so that there will be the balance between the two. He talks about how because they're there to please the people, that they don't want to lose their seat, that they're going to be more likely to do what the people want. And then he closes with reminding them that our patriotism will guard the liberties and that hopefully the government will prove its worth and prove the naysayers wrong. So that is the end of what we are looking at in this speech in favor of the federal Constitution by James Madison. I hope it was helpful, and please dive deeper than what I did and investigate more and consider more. I mean, I am ashamed at how little I know how to explain how our government works. So you guys do better than me, okay? Research more, find out more, and do better than me. I'm reclaiming my own education as we homeschool moms often do. All right. Good job, guys.